Good evening. What a pleasure to join my colleagues in faith in Houston to take up such an incredibly important subject. In Judaism, we strive to keep a covenant with God. It is the same covenant that God sealed with our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God pursued with Moses and the Israelites, and God manifested in the words of the prophets such as Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah. Ever since, God has been more a silent partner in our covenantal relationship. The duty to discern its meaning has fallen on our sages and rabbis, past and present, through study and teaching. Yet Torah makes it clear that its teachings are not too complex, nor too far from us, that someone needs to retrieve them for us and impart them to us. Rather, God's teachings are in our mouths to speak of them, in our hearts to understand them, and in our hands to do them. The covenant of our past is the covenant of our present. Its demands for moral and ethical life devolve upon us, and the obligation has never been greater. At stake is the sacred duty to live by God's teachings, not die by them, or cause others to die by them. Rabbi Dr. Eugene Borowitz explained our covenant with God this way. When we seek God as partner in every significant act, we invest our doing and deciding with direction, hope, and worth. And where we fail, we have the possibility for repair. Inherent in our covenant is God's unconditional love and hope for God's creations. Living in covenant, we thrive. When we fail, the same covenant provides a path to healing and to wholeness. But how does the covenant provide a path to healing and to wholeness when an individual commits a heinous act against the community? In Torah, there's a litany of offenses for which a person may be put to death, including murder, idolatry, blasphemy, adultery, violating the Sabbath, sorcery, and even rebelling against one's parents. None of us have been such violators. Violators might be punished by stoning, burning, and slaying by the sword. But to read only Torah, and not the formidable laws in Talmud and similar volumes of Jewish case law, gives a terribly false impression of the actual incidence of capital punishment in ancient Israel. In principle, it appears that Torah supports the death penalty. In practice, it places before it extraordinary and remarkable obstacles to its implementation. In principle, the purpose of the death penalty has been defended in Judaism. Dr. Stephen Plout of Haifa University explained it this way. The preservation of human dignity requires capital punishment of convicted murderers. It is precisely because of man's creation in God's image that capital punishment is declared justified and necessary. Moreover, capital punishment is regarded in Judaism as a favor, a form of atonement and redemption. However, in practice, the opposite point is made in two important examples. First, Dr. David Sperling teaches that the lex talionis, the law of retaliation, thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, may appear to endorse capital punishment, but it is actually a formula for restricting the punishment to be meted out. Restoring justice was the goal. Adjudicated compensation was the means. Second, Torah distinguishes between unintentional killing and premeditated murder. In the case of an unintentional slaying, the killer is permitted to take refuge in one of the 6 cities on the other side of the Jordan River. In the case of murder, after Cain kills his brother Abel in a fit of rage, God does not demand Cain's life in retribution. Rather, God marks Cain on the forehead. It is not a sign of punishment, but one of protection. The mark of Cain served as a kind of mobile city of refuge to ward off anyone seeking to avenge the wrong Cain had committed. The Talmud is perfectly clear on the meaning of the Torah texts. After a dense discussion of the capital crimes and their sometimes grisly punishments, scholars agree that it is highly doubtful that the rabbis ever imposed the death penalty. As for the rebellious son and the course of punishment outlined in Torah, the Talmud states, it never happened and it will never happen. In normative Judaism today, and in the state of Israel since 1954, with one exception, one found guilty of genocide, the moral standards of our time and place demand nothing less than the abolishment of the death penalty. From the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the liberal branch of Judaism, we understand that while biblical law mandates the death penalty for 36 offenses, we follow rabbinic interpretations that effectively abolished the death penalty centuries ago. Talmud stresses the importance of presenting completely accurate testimony in capital cases, for any mistakes or falsehoods could result in the shedding of innocent blood. The major Jewish movements in the United States all have specific policies supporting either abolition of the death penalty or a moratorium on its use. In conclusion, the covenant saves us from personal, spiritual, and moral destruction. In turn, through study of Torah and its teachings, further recorded in Talmud, and performing deeds which reach the level of a mitzvah, a commandment by God, we save the covenant from destruction. Our duty is to reclaim the power and purpose of God's covenant every day. Then our world, our nation, our cities, and our families preclude the need for any death penalty. There's nothing more painful than the death of innocent victims of senseless crime. Most recently, none of us has been untouched by the aftermath of the horror in Tucson. Is the answer to take another life? Will it restore justice, restore life, or honor God's covenant? Our moral obligation is not to murder again. Our moral obligation is to be mindful stewards of God's covenant. Therefore, to recall Rabbi Borowitz's words, let us all resolve to seek God as partner in every significant act, to invest our doing and deciding with direction, hope, and worth. And where we fail, always to seek for ourselves and others the possibility for repair. Thank you.